Hello everyone, and welcome to Busch Gardens Christmas Town. You may or may not know that I grew up in Virginia Beach, and ironically, I probably spent more summer days at Busch Gardens than at the beach. There were some summers when we would go at least one time every week, and some days when we would go later in the afternoon just to get some fresh air, walk around, people watch, ride some rides, and come back home. Even now, I have the whole map memorized and can recall specific scents like the smell of funnel cakes mixed with chlorine for the water rides. I know useless information like how tall a Paul's chariot is, how many seconds until the griffin drops, when to strike a pose for the camera on all of the rides, and that the best view of the 4th of July fireworks is actually from the parking lot, although some people will argue that it's from the Rhine River Bridge. But anyways, having such a connection to the parks made it all the more special experiencing it once again during such a magical time of the year with a few of my closest friends from university. I don't know what compelled me to lug around my giant camera that day, but I'm so glad that I did. This year, 2020, has probably been the most undocumented year since I've been in possession of a camera and/or phone. I didn't find many things worthy of being captured, nothing too exciting to remember and keep through a collection of photos and videos. I think a large reason why we tend to see the past through rose-colored lenses is because our tokens of remembrance are visual documents of our highest highs. Even if we jot down our thoughts and feelings during low moments in private journals, we don't go back and make an effort to remember these moments. At least I definitely don't. We tend to leave them in the past as soon as we turn to the next page. But there's something about photos and videos that we'll scroll through the archives for to re-experience the highlights of our lives. This day in 2018 was definitely one of those highlights of my 4th year. Despite the many years of visiting the parks, it was actually my first time going to Christmas Town. It was fresh and new, yet still so familiar and nostalgic. Going through all of the footage to make this video reminded me of how beautiful the world's most beautiful park truly is, and for lack of a better word, I just remembered how fun the whole day was. Even though I had been to the parks dozens of times, I wanted to film and record everything as if it was my very first time there. The interesting and maybe even a little funny part of recording your whole day is finding that the majority of what you filmed isn't objectively exciting at all. These moments of stillness and waiting are given meaning and carry the thrill of the big picture moment, even when they themselves are not thrilling as a standalone instance in time. Mundane moments are defined by the context in which they rest. So even the underexposed clip of waiting in line for the cable cars in the cold next to the smelly animal farm kindles all of the warm and fuzzy feelings. Most of the footage is just of my friends and I walking around, stopping to take pictures, sitting down and resting, and chatting and laughing as we did back at school. I ended up editing out a lot of it because it's repetitive to watch and probably not very entertaining for most. But for me, these are the little bits I cherish. It's the in-between moments that I find so endearing. And if you've ever gone to an amusement park, you know that the moments in between the exciting things, such as the next ride or the next show, are actually longer than the rides or shows themselves. Waiting is the motif of any day at an amusement park. Standing and waiting, sitting and waiting, walking and waiting, even eating and waiting. You spend most of your time waiting, but you just don't care because the next thing just after this period of waiting is so worth it, even when you know that the exciting thing will be over before you know it. But, of course, not surprisingly, the season of waiting that is 2020 has not been anything like waiting in line at Busch Gardens. Waiting when you can't see the end of this season and the beginning of the next is the hardest type of waiting. I'm sure this year has not been easy for most, and that whoever's watching this has also been in a difficult period of waiting. Waiting to properly walk across the stage and graduate. Waiting to celebrate I do's with all your family and friends in person. Waiting to receive a job offer. Waiting for a grad school acceptance letter. And even waiting to get back to waiting in traffic on your daily commute. But the point is, this year has made us all enter into a season of waiting in one form or another, and it's been uncomfortable learning how to be still. I've learned that moving from glory to glory is not a back-to-back sequence of victories, but that there is an in-between that lasts for an undefined length of time before we get to move on to that next glory. We are all moving along a timeline that gives us no clue as to when we'll reach the next milestone, and that's an excruciating wait. There were definitely times when I was grateful for such forced rest and stillness in a time and place that do not praise these practices, but most of the time I was itching for the normal from before. This year confronted me with my cultural conditioning, a worldview that saw these practices as useless. I also had to come to terms with the fact that my habit of staying busy was actually a method of escape from slowing down and reflecting and spending time with the Lord, time that would reveal to me my deepest flaws, my greatest failures, and still lingering hurts. Becoming still at the feet of Jesus meant opening my hands to let go of all of these things that I had been holding on to and receiving His promises instead. But letting go also meant acknowledging all the big and little things I had been holding on to, and it was and is incredibly overwhelming. To be completely honest, I'm still having a difficult time shedding my conditioned mindset and entering into a place of stillness, silence, and waiting. I realized through all of this that I am far from patient and that waiting is one of my least favorite things to do. I like instant gratification and living a high-tension life. But I know God is calling me into something better. Though I haven't completely internalized this truth, I know that the fulfillment of the promises of God are worth waiting for, and I can have full confidence that they will come to pass. Yet, even while knowing this in my head, my heart causes me to stumble. I start to get impatient again, and fighting for joy doesn't seem like a worthwhile battle. I am coming to an understanding that my faith is weak, and that the reason why I don't like waiting for too long is because my hope in the promises of God start to dwindle the longer I wait for them to come to fruition in my life. I kept wanting to go back to this day in 2018 because I rely so much on what I can see and hear and experience. It's so much easier to know and believe in the goodness and faithfulness of God when life feels good, but it's much harder when nothing is going as you had planned. Just as I was struggling through all of this, I recently got to Hebrews in my Bible reading plan. Hebrews travels through the history of God's promises to His people of the better covenant of Jesus. In Hebrews 11, the author goes through all of the instances of faith in the Old Testament. Faith in what, though? Of course, faith in God and His character, but also all of these people from the Old Testament acted in faith as they waited for God's promise for the better covenant to pass. All of the people mentioned in this passage were promised Jesus, but never lived to see the day when Jesus would come to save the world. They waited, and not passively, but with active anticipation, faithful living, and unabashed hope. I feel like all of this was timely as we are halfway into Advent, a time of waiting for the arrival of the one who came to fulfill this great promise of God. What does it look like to be a people who wait in such a way? To wait even when we do not know when the season will end, a promise will be fulfilled, or a prayer answered. I don't quite know how I will respond to all of this with and in my life. I'm still processing these convictions and reminders. I am very much speaking this to my heart as I hope these words are speaking to each of your individual life circumstances. I want to end this video by sharing a devotional from Jesus Calling. On my birthday this year, my mom actually cut out and framed the devotional that was written for my birthday, June 18. I think it perfectly relates to all of this, and hopefully soon I can say that I am living a life in tune with these truths. Walking in step with the Lord, not dwelling on what's behind or worried about what's ahead, unhurried and abiding. June 18. You are my beloved child. I chose you before the foundation of the world to walk with me along paths designed uniquely for you. Concentrate on keeping in step with me instead of trying to anticipate my plans for you. If you trust that my plans are to prosper you and not to harm you, you can relax and enjoy the present moment. Your hope and your future are rooted in heaven, where eternal glory awaits you. Nothing can rob you of your inheritance of unimaginable riches and well-being. Sometimes I grant you glimpses of your glorious future to encourage you and spur you on, but your main focus should be staying close to me. I set the pace in keeping with your needs and my purposes. So, in light of what I just read, whether we feel like we've been keeping in step with the Lord this year or have avoided kneeling at the feet of Jesus, I pray that we don't give up as we step into another day, week, month, and year. May we continue to run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. And with that, I will leave you. Thanks for watching this video, and I will see you in the next. Bye for now.